Team Liquid get their revenge on Cloud9. They take them down pretty convincingly. Also, Dignitas, they kind of get clapped by EG without the kinda. Not really a close series in either one. We got lots of playoff series coming up this week. So we're going to preview those as well. This is episode 54 of the Clown Fiesta podcast with Blue Jay and JNT250. JNT, let's get into Cloud9 TL. Not the way we thought this series was going to go.
Yeah, honestly, it just felt like Team Liquid came out way stronger than I think anyone was expecting. Like, I think
Yes.
everybody knew that Team Liquid is a strong team and that they were at some point going to figure it out. Whether it be like I don't think people were expecting them to look this good in this series, but in a world where they drop down to the lower bracket and they get like kind of a warm-up series against one of the weaker teams, we were then expecting to see, a much stronger version of TL and one that can compete against the TSMs, the EGs, the 100 Thieves, and in this series, they kind of dominated Cloud9 in games 1 and 2. Like games 1 and 2 weren't really even close.
Absolute stomps, right?
Yeah.
And throughout the series, not if you want to count, of course, game 1 and 2, but throughout the whole series altogether, it was a gap in pretty much every single role. Team Liquid was better than Cloud9. And that was also very stunning, considering that we saw C9 beat them just last week. I think most people had C9 as the favorites since C9's beat them most of this year. If we go all the way back to spring, they beat them in 2 series and playoffs. And so C9 definitely coming in as the favorites in this series, but oh my God, did Team Liquid surprise.
Yeah, the main thing that I thought was super interesting from the TL side was just how much they switched up their entire like draft philosophy basically going into the series. We kind of seen like the AD bruisers fall off a little bit towards the back end of the season, kind of just due to like repeated nerfs. Like Viego's been getting nerfed a bunch, Lee Sin has been getting nerfed a bunch, and all of a sudden we just saw like these monster games from Jensen on Lee Sin, and then we saw Tactical getting thrown into the Ziggs. But the main thing that I thought was really good about the drafts, which I thought really kind of like fucked up the whole C9 gameplay, was the Sejuani in the jungle because Sedge is such an early game dominant champion, does really well in early skirmishes, pairs super, super well with AD mid lane champions, and it basically just gives you like permanent 2v2 prio, fighting power, and control. And I thought that was like the perfect way, to shut down Cloud9 in both of those first two games. You could kind of tell bot lane was just a straight up weak side gameplay from Tactical in game one on the Ziggs and game two on the Jhin, and you could kind of just feel with all these fights centering around mid, and then Cloud9 kind of choosing to go top side as like a last resort, like okay, we have to try to like make a play to save the game. You would then just have Tactical free farming bot side and just like getting these massive gold advantages. Like if you look at game one and game two, like there were like 6,000 gold leads with only like 2 or 3 kills in an advantage for Team Liquid. Like in most games, they got like 10 out of the 15 plates. They broke the first 3 towers before Cloud9 even got 1 tower, and it was just like a straight up like lane domination.
Yeah, it felt like Cloud9 had no answer into the Ziggs, and Tactical was able to just chill and just hang out until he could scale with Ziggs and just take down turrets. I don't even know how many turret plates they got in this series. They got, I think, the one game that had like 12 or 13 plates,
And
which
in the
is
first two, they had at least 10 in both games.
that's a lot of gold to get that early. And then we saw those leads just get ballooned so much. By the end of these games, it was like 10, 15K gold leads. Like it was insane how much out the gate TL was just absolutely stomping Cloud9. And even though I mentioned that Tactical was just, free farming on Ziggs and C9 didn't have any plan for him, the mid lane I can't ignore. Jensen hard gapped Perks in the mid lane, and it was really simple: gank mid. You know what it felt like? It felt like how teams used to play with Jizuke. You know how Medios would always talk about if you want to kill, just gank Jizuke, and we used to say that with confidence a few months ago. It felt like the same thing against Perks, just gank mid. Santorin got so many leads. Well, I don't even want to say Santorin. Santorin and Jensen got so many leads together through the mid lane just with ganking.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Like they killed him 2 times early in game one. They killed him early in game two, and they first blooded him game three, even though that was like Perks' best game by far on the rise. And then
Yeah.
game four was literally all just about fighting around mid, 2v2 and 3v3.
Yeah. Let's talk. Okay, let's talk about game 4 because the mid lane was not just the mid lane. We had supports in the mid lane. Well, I mean, the supports were absolutely everywhere. But was that not awesome? Like, I thought that game was so entertaining. I remember tweeting, I didn't want the supports to ever go back bot lane again because it seemed like they were making so much. They were influencing the game so much just as supports. It's like that's the way you want to see support played rather than just sitting and slowly farming in lane. It felt like both of them were trying to make something happen rather than just wait and play this slow game, which TL has been criticized heavily for in the past. We certainly didn't see that, especially in Game 4 with Core JJ on the Shen.
Yeah, it was kind of like one of the main reasons why people really view Doublelift. Sorry. One of the main reasons why people really view Doublelift as, sorry, people view Vulcan and Core JJ as really great supports, is because of their ability to kind of just influence the map with early roams. And it's something that Doublelift talks about a lot on his co-stream, and
Mm-hmm.
how Doublelift, Christ, I keep saying Doublelift and Core JJ because he used to play together. But how Core JJ and Vulcan are basically finding all these roam timings throughout the entire series. You would see Cloud9 or Team Liquid make a play like a top side dive, level 3, level 4, and both supports would just straight up be there, like right away, no matter what. And it was really cool to see both supports, as you said in that game 4, kind of just like run around the map and do whatever they want.
Yeah, honestly, so insane. And I remember saying so many times that we knew TL's gonna play around top lane. Well, it didn't seem like they had to do that, despite the fact that Alfari was just better than Fudge in this series. It felt like TL was able to get leads no matter where they went, which was totally not what I was ready to see in this series. It didn't like for the weeks leading up, it felt like you had to win through Alfari, and I remember saying specifically that TL has other carries and they can win through other lanes, and I would like to see them do it, but I didn't expect them to do it, and well, clearly they did.
Yeah, I really think this series was just like the straight up Jensen show. Like his laning was so great. I think people were really expecting him to be on this sort of control mage style, and to see him whip out the Lee Sin 2 times and absolutely dominate on the Syndra 1v1, it felt like people were not expecting that whatsoever.
Yeah, honestly, absolutely insane. Um, where else though can we talk about? What else can we talk about this series? I think one of the biggest things for me was how it did not seem like a factor whatsoever that Santorin was able to play with no issue. We had Santorin back for week 9, and that was about it. And I remember even seeing some issues with him flashing into walls and these kinds of things. We didn't see any of that. He was so solid. And then if we're going to talk about Santorin, we have to talk about the steal in Game 4. That ultimately sealed the series. I think Cloud9 comes back and they definitely go to Game 5. I think they would have won the series. I think they would have reverse swept, but they definitely would have pushed it to Game 5 if not for the steal from Santorin. And a lot of times you need to talk about how clutch a player can be. And when I think of clutch, I think of players like Bjergsen, if we want to talk about the past, or if we want to talk about more current, we could talk about Spica with his clutch Baron steals or smites. And that's exactly what we saw out of Santorin in that particular game. Closed out the game, closed out the series. Not something you expect to see from a guy who's been sitting on the shelf for the whole summer split.
Yeah, no, I think Santorin had a really good series, and like I did mention before, like I just think the Sedge pick was like super good into what Cloud9 wanted to do, because Cloud9's favorite thing to do is go for these early fights, go for these early lane skirmishes, and when you have a champ like Sedge, just has like so much dueling power early on into the game, you can really shut that down. And then, just like you said, you kind of have that intangible, which is like your 50/50 smiting ability. I think that's one thing, like, I would say could be like Blabber's biggest weakness, is it feels like he loses a lot of these like 50/50 smites. And not to say like, I mean, obviously, that game can go a completely different direction should they get that smite. But just thinking about like moments in the past, like it does feel like, a Blabber isn't one of those clutch smiters like we kind of see from like the Spica nowadays, or the Xmithies of the past kind of thing.
Yeah. And when it comes to smiting, I think it's important to say I think a lot of people still, even to this day, always just point at the jungler. But when it comes down to smites, like it's more than just the jungler, it is zoning. Like that is something that the team needs to do as well. However, in this instance, when you're up against a Ziggs, it's really difficult to zone because you get poked at really hard by a Ziggs. And I rewatched the play because I remember after they got the 3 kills, I remember wondering if they could have just killed the Sejuani when Santorin walked up towards the blast cone to bounce over towards Baron into the pit. And I remember thinking, even if Sejuani's that close to them, if they go to kill Sejuani, the Ziggs is right there and probably destroys them as well. So I think it was the right call for Cloud9 to just jump over the pit, burst down Baron as fast as you can, and sort of flip it, even though you and I have said it's kind of like a 60-40 in favor of Cloud9. I think what they did was the right play ultimately. You just have to give props to Santorin for making an incredibly clutch play.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like a desperate call, but also a call that, as you mentioned, I think was kind of necessary. Like you look at the game state right then and there, they were down 4K before that team fight that they had just won. They still had no towers in the game. Plus, Team Liquid has 3 dragons on the other side of the map when it's going to be an Infernal Soul. So
Mm-hmm.
I basically think, best case scenario is if you get that Baron, you're most likely going to clean up the outside 3 towers, which is going to net you another 2k gold. It's probably going to lead you to that Drake to stop the TL Snowball with the Dragon Soul win con, and the play just came up tails. And like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you can be pissed about it, you can be mad about it, but it felt like it was the right call, and you could really tell like in that game 4, like Cloud9 was getting pretty desperate. Like I just remember
Yeah.
there was that play maybe like 5 or 6 minutes before that where they're like Talia ulting Alfari when he's in between his tier 1 and tier 2 tower, and they just like drop the Shen ulti on him and just like reverse the play and get 2 kills pretty much, and they get even further ahead than they were before. And when you're in a spot like that, when you're in a game that's kind of looking doomed, when you're down 4 or 5k, you're down 3 Drakes, like you just got to go for Baron sometimes. And you
Yeah.
know, get the Baron, you're just like right back into the game. And like you said, like Cloud9 has all the momentum. Like it goes to game 5, we don't know what the hell is going to happen, but Santorin gets the smite and closes out a really great series from TL. Like it feels like the series like you can't really knock Cloud9 because of how well TL was playing. Like it's not like Cloud9 was making a bunch of terrible plays. Some of the plays might have looked terrible because they were behind. TL was just doing a really good job of getting ahead in the first place.
Yeah, and you mentioned how like it looked like Cloud9 was making desperate plays. It's because they are desperate in that scenario. Like they were down like 5k. And of course, you're just, like I mentioned, the enemy team has a Ziggs who's going to scale really hard and he will poke you out of objectives. So if you have an opportunity to go for an objective when you're down, I believe it was somewhere in the ballpark around 5k, you go for it. And so that's what happened there. One of the other things I want to mention before we move on with this series was I was a little bit disappointed with Cloud9's drafting. And I don't want to take away from Jensen because I think his Syndra was amazing. But Syndra is going to be hella OP right now. Her buffs were absolutely insane to her Q. It was just mana buffs. Her Q cost like 20 less mana at rank 1. That is insane. I couldn't believe when I was reading that how much the buffs were to her mana. That's the only thing that Syndra really struggled with was early laning phase. She would go very often when you would see her played. Those buffs are so insane. Of course, Jensen was able to get Prio in those games against like a Viego, for example. And then naturally he's able to roam first. And that's what got them snowballing. I believe it was game 2. He just roamed top because he's against a Viego. And like Syndra's going to get the push there all day long. And that was what started the snowball in game 2. And I'm surprised that one, they let it through. And then two, that they let it through again later in the series. I think Jensen, he might have played it in game 3. I don't remember. Maybe it was 4. But I think he got it twice in the series, which I was like, really surprised that Cloud9's leaving that up. It's automatic Prio, and Prio is just too valuable right now, especially when you had seen how Team Liquid was playing in this series. Prio meant a lot, and they were doing a lot with it.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I did think was really weird about the C9 drafts was kind of you already mentioned it was the Viego mid in game 2. Like I feel like that game was a perfect example of why Viego mid just isn't good anymore. Like the whole reason why it was good was because it could never get pushed out in lane, and therefore you just like had the push and had all the fighting power. But his like healing on minions has gone from 100% to 10%, and you could see that whole game. He just like slowly was going down 5 or 10 CS every 5 or 10 minutes that passed in the game, and he was just perma sitting at his tower with like 50% HP, like farming, and couldn't do a single thing. The other thing, which I don't know, we did mention it felt like Cloud9 was getting desperate. Like the Talia jungle pick in game 4 felt kind of weird. I know like Mithy kind of gave like a little side interview right as like the game was going on about how they've been picking it back up and using it in scrims, and I get that like it's a good pairing with the Renekton, which it historically is, but it does feel like such a random pick, and pretty obvious that they didn't have an answer uh, to the Sejuani in terms of like a jungler who can match or do more in the early game. And it's like, okay, we're gonna play this like farm heavy style champion, except we're not gonna farm and we're just gonna perma fight.
Yeah, so I don't mind the Talia. I think it's okay, especially if you've had success with it and you think you can win with it. I'm okay with it. That's fine with me. You talked about the little interviews at the start of the games. How useless are those, by the way?
Yeah, those are so
Because
pointless.
they ask like their intentions are good here, but like they ask like, "Hey, what do you think about these picks?" in the middle of a series. What are they going to do? Just give away their draft strategy and be like, "Yeah, we think this champion's really strong right now." Like, come on. Why are you asking these questions? I think those interviews are really, really weird. One last thing I'll say is I have a little theory with the Viego mid thing. So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the way the draft was going was Cloud9 already had 3 physical damage threats. I think it was like Viego, was it Viego, Jace, and uh Varus, maybe I want to say. I don't remember. There was 3 physical damage threats, and so you needed an AP threat. And in the second ban phase, Team Liquid banned, I think it was Ryze and maybe Orianna, so they banned 2 AP threats. And I think it forced Cloud9 to go with an AP threat in the jungle, and then they ended up flexing the Viego to mid because they did play the Viego earlier jungle in the series. So just a little theory. I don't know, but that may have pushed the Viego to the mid lane and then put them in the unfavorable matchup. But
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, I think that probably could have been the case, and I think TL probably also thought the same because that was one of the reasons why like Diana really fell through the draft super hard that game, and even like the Meteos double of Sneaky Coaching was talking about. It's like, why the hell is Diana falling this far through the draft?
yeah.
But then they end up just like sending the Viego mid and get the Diana jungle. But I just feel like Viego mid is like super useless to where like should have just sent it jungle and picked like a lower tier mid laner because like the mid laner that you like a lower tier AP mid laner instead of this like pretty useless mid laner in Viego. I think if it's a fighter versus fighter mid lane, I think that's totally fine for Viego because that's where he shines and that's why we kind of see him exclusively top and jungle now because a lot of the champion's power now is in fighting. Like they didn't nerf any of his fighting ability, they just nerfed his sustain, and sustain is really important in mid lane, and I just think
Yeah.
it was bad.
Yep, yep. He definitely got punished. I think he didn't get his. I think he got his mythic. I think he got
It
Sunderer
was
around like
super late.
18 minutes. I heard Freak mention something about 18 minutes Sunderer, and I think he was talking about perks if I remember right. But
He was
anyway,
sitting on like Phage Merctrez for like what felt like the first 15 minutes of the
yeah.
game.
Yeah. Anyways, TL absolutely surprised in the best of ways. I'm really excited now because I was afraid that TL wasn't going to be a threat. Where start of the year, this I was like, we're talking January. I was like, this team should be a threat, and I was really excited to see what TL can do. And if TL is just starting to ramp up now, because well, let's be honest, Santorin hasn't been playing very long with them. Even Alfari only played half the split. I feel like there's room for this team to ramp up. Jensen's had a really good playoff series, whereas he didn't really have that great of a split. This is like a really good sign out of TL, and so I'm really excited to see how they're going to do against TSM. But we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Do you want to move on to EG Dig, or did you have anything else on the series?
Now we'll go over to EG Dig now. The lesser of the two series in terms of quality gameplay, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, okay, this is what we expected. Okay, like we both predicted 3-0, and sure, it wasn't a 3-0, but
It should have been a
this was a
3-0.
3-0. You know, like
Like it should
yeah,
have been a 3-0. Like
yeah.
ah,
There was the one Baron. So the one game that EG threw was where they're on Baron. I don't think they had any Dig members dead,
no, it
and they didn't
was
have
all members were up.
and Jizuke wasn't hitting the Baron. Which here's the thing. So you could look at it as well. Azir is really good at zoning people off of Baron, right? So maybe that's why Jizuke wasn't hitting Baron. But Azir's probably one of the best DPS champions there is in the game at killing Baron. And so maybe you could have had someone else zone off. And while he DPSs, I don't remember the full comp, so I would have to go back and look at it again. But I know that Baron took way too long. And even though most of the series was bad from Dig, I will give Afro credit that he had a really nice engage on Rakan there with, well, the way Rakan always engages. He ulties, he flashes in with W, and he got a pretty, I think, 2 or 3 man knock up, and they cleaned up the fight. So, got to give some credit to Afro there, despite the fact that I think he was kind of useless for the rest of the series.
Yeah, the thing for me on that whole like Baron like series of events. Like Azir started off by zoning, but when EG or when Dignitas actually walked into proximity to be hit, that's when Jizuke kind of just retreated, did nothing, and started hitting the Baron randomly. And then they were just all funneled in for this
Yeah.
massive engage where Afro did the flash RW, Acadian ulted, Yasui flash ulted, and Yasui. Okay, man, Yasui played so terribly that game on Irelia. His KDA was super deceiving. I think the only reason he had that great of a KDA was because Acadian was really smurfing that game. But if Yasui got out of that fight with 1 HP, if he dies and gives Diego the reset, Diego's gonna kill them all, like he did 5 minutes later into the game where Yasui inted once again. Diego got the reset and got a quadra kill and almost threw the game back in favor of
Okay,
EG.
let's get the Yusui stuff out of the way
He's
because
terrible. The
it
whole
didn't
game, the
matter
whole
what
series
he
was
was
bad.
playing. He played Kindred, it looked awful again. He got hard gapped by the Lucian. He played Aurelia. Even though he was ahead, I did not think his Aurelia looked very good either.
Dude,
Um,
Acadian was just spoon feeding him kills the whole game.
yeah, what else? What else did he play? He
He
played
had
Kindred,
two
Aurelia,
Yasuo
Yasuo,
games into
two Yasuos.
into ginormous counter matchups. Yasuo smashes TF and Lucian and was just down 10 CS in lane permanently and just was
Yeah,
not
you
doing
could
anything.
tell it was clear off the bat that EG did not respect, or maybe it was Jizuke, but whoever did not respect Yusui because they counterpicked the TF in game one into the Yasuo, and it was like, huh, they don't really think much of this Yusui guy, and well, the series kind of showed why he didn't really do much of anything. He ran it down quite often.
Dude, he there was just so many moments in this series where he was legit running it down, like that Kindred game. What was he doing? Like right at the start of the game, he's getting Lucian culling, and then he jumped over the wall into three people while eating the whole culling as a level 5 Kindred. One thing that I thought was really weird was that they were mentioning how Kindred just after while they were watching the game, that Kindred seems like a really terrible pick. And I went back and looked at because we did see a few Kindred mid games earlier on in the split from LCS and at MSI, and I found it interesting that all four Kindred mid games were up against Lucian. So it must feel like
Hmm.
teams think that it's a good pick into the Lucian, but from what I can remember, every single game, it looks giga useless.
Well, he did. So it was Yusui that played it into the Lucian against what bad team was it? It was a bad team.
Okay, well,
And he actually popped off on it earlier in the split, I believe.
yeah, but it was
Um,
if so, it was
but
against the
that game was
Lucian
an
then.
absolute stomp. It was that game. Yeah, that game was an absolute stomp, if I recall correctly.
The other one
So
was Perks against Humanoid at MSI, and then I think another one was a Eastern
I think it was against
Kindred mid.
FlyQuest. I think it was against FlyQuest. I'm
Well, they're
thinking
terrible,
about it.
so
Yeah, they absolutely stomped them. Um, Anyways, it doesn't matter. It did in this game. It looked really really bad. He got hard gapped on pretty much everything. So I'm done flaming Yusui because
yep,
I
we can stop now.
well, yeah, I don't want to flame him. He just looked out of place. The last thing I'll say on the Yusui thing is that it makes me think of the sunk cost fallacy for Dignitas. It's like maybe they thought they invested so much time into Yusui that he should be starting, but as we've said pretty much all split long, we thought it should be Soligo. Well, it wasn't, and we saw the results of what happened when Yusui plays. Let's move on to
Well,
any
hold
other
on.
player.
Well, one thing that I'll
Go
say
ahead.
is I have a feeling that that game two just gave all of Dignitas false confidence that Yasui should keep playing, because
Mm,
I feel like Saligo should have came in when Dig was down either 2-0 or 2-1, and they were down 2-1 after Yasui entered his face off on the Kindred, and I'd just be really surprised if one, Saligo isn't starting the next series, or two, if he doesn't come in at all. Because if Saligo gets subbed out after week one and they just put out this whole bullshit video hey, Saligo's gonna do better in Academy, and oh, Yasui's gonna learn mid, and at the end of the season we're gonna have two great mids, and they just never come back to Saligo. It's really disrespectful, honestly, to pull one of your
yeah,
best players from Spring Split, or one of your biggest role players from Spring Split, and just fuck him over and they put this
yeah.
shitter in mid lane, I'd be
Well,
really
here's the
pissed.
thing, though. I think it's important to say that that is obviously not their goal. Their goal isn't, hey, we're gonna fuck him over. Their goal, they think they can win with Yusui. I think they're wrong, but they clearly think that. I don't think that they're like trying to fuck over anyone, and I think it's important that we say that. But yeah, I am with you. I hope to see Saligo in the next years. Who cares? What have you got to lose? Can it look
Yeah,
worse?
exactly.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I agree.
Uh, anyways, let's talk about something else.
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
EG, I think EG just did what they needed to do. They were just
yeah.
like hella outplaying EG and Lane. Like, oh my god. Anytime they panned top lane between Fake God and Impact, Impact was just like absolutely dumpstering him in any trade and was up
There
so
was
much CS
the one game Impact got hard gapped
where he
because
got spoon-fed kills
yeah.
from Acadian again.
Yeah, okay, I actually thought Acadian had a good series, and
Dude,
I
Acadian
think both
played
of us have
really
been
well.
yeah, I think both of us have been pretty critical of his gameplay, especially at the start when he first got subbed in. But yeah, to me, this series was not on him whatsoever. I actually thought that his Gragas mechanics were really good, but I will say he wasn't able to have an influence enough on the early parts of the game where it's like when he's making some of these plays, they're already just too far behind. And you could partially pin that on Acadian, but you could also partially pin that on losing lanes everywhere. So it's
Yeah.
not. I do
It's
feel for
pretty
Acadian a little bit because I actually thought his Gragas looked pretty good.
it's pretty disgusting though when you pick Fake God Renekton 3 times and 2 of those times he like hard loses and the other one you like spoon feed him 2 kills early into the game and then he does absolutely nothing for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's really surprising to me the fall off that we've seen from Fake God. Not that he was like amazing in spring, but he was solid.
He
Like
was
he
like
was
a
a solid
he was
top
like a
laner.
top 5 6 top laner.
Yeah, yeah, and we're not seeing that at all. He looks very, very
He's
useless.
like one of the
Uh,
worst.
yeah, he's uh, what's the word? I don't know. The word's
Inting?
not coming to me. No, he is what's the word? A
I don't know.
liability.
Oh
He's a
yeah. No, he
liability.
is. And yeah.
Yes, yes, he's a liability in the top lane, and it definitely showed. Okay, let's talk about the graphic. If we're talking about Fake God,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
talk about the fucking graphic thing. That is the most troll thing I've ever seen. They pull up this graphic, and for those of you that missed it, this was in between games. They pull up a graphic comparing Fake God's accomplishments
Quote
in air
unquote
quotes
accomplishments, yeah.
to to Impact, and they show Impact like he's a world champion, he's been to Worlds this many times, he's been to MSI this many times, he's an LCS champion this many times, and then they show Fake God's accomplishments, and it's like, oh, he's been to the LCS playoffs twice,
As
which is
a
like
terrible seed.
top 8, by the way. And not to mention, like, this is like rookie season. Is this rookie season?
Well, if you count the 100 Thieves stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, it's rookie season pretty much.
It's like
He's a
1.5
new player.
years.
If he's not a rookie, if it's not his rookie season, fine. Like he's not, he has not been around nearly as long as
It's his
Impact.
third split.
And I think Doublelift or Meteos, one of them said like you could do that to Fudge and it would look just as bad. Like no top laner, you shouldn't compare any of their accomplishments to Impact. Like that's just not fair to do that, and it's a really bad look.
Yeah, the thing that I also found really weird about it, was there was a lot of flame on Twitter and Reddit about like the LCS broadcast like doing this kind of thing to a player, and then a lot of the members of the broadcast like openly defending it, and basically their reasoning was saying that like people were taking it out of context because the majority of people were seeing it from the double of media sneaky stuff, and they were obviously shitting on the broadcast on it, and a lot of them just felt like people were like dogpiling on top of a you know a graphic that was thrown up with no audio, but like they were trying to frame it in some manner like they weren't doing it to hurt either, they weren't doing it to hurt Fake God's image and they were just like comparing the two players, but it's like you can't do that after it's been game 1 and after Fake God had just gotten absolutely
Yeah,
dumpstered in lane and just say
yeah.
like, "Oh, we're just like using this as a comparison to see why like Impact's so much better." It's like, "Yeah, cuz he's fucking Impact." Like you just said,
Yes.
you pull this up to pretty much any LCS top laner in the league except for like Hooney maybe, because like Hooney made a kind of a funny thing on Twitter afterwards about it, and like penciled in his stuff on the thing. Like other than Hooney, everyone is gonna look like a piece of shit against this.
Yeah. Um yeah, that's the thing. I don't think they're trying to flame him with that graphic. That's not what they're trying to do, but like you got to use your head there and know that this is going to look bad regardless of of whether they're like, even though it's muted on the TriCast, it's still troll as hell to put that up. Regardless, like, you need to use your head and realize that's just not the play at any time, in my opinion, because people how people are going to look at that.
Yeah, like
And the funny thing, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, I think if you use that graphic and some form of argument at the start of the broadcast before the series started and said, "Hey, oh my God, look at this massive difference in like competitive experience between top lane.
Yes.
Top lane's gonna be a huge issue." I'd be like, "That's a totally fine argument. That's a totally fine thing to bring up and use." Not after you've just been absolutely dumpstered, and then are trying to use it as validation for why he got dumpstered.
Even at the top where it says accomplishments, why couldn't you just say as a title like difference in experience or something, like, to just show like
Yeah, like is
you're not trying to push Fake God down with his lack of accomplishments, rather you're just trying to
like
show that
LCS
Impact has
experience or
been
something.
around. Yeah,
Yeah,
it really with that graphic, it feels like you're pushing Fake God down rather than lifting Impact up, and I think that's the problem.
yeah.
I don't think they were trying to flame Fake God, but that's how it comes off, and it was just bad. And as that gets pulled up on the broadcast, I at Medios in his chat being like, by the way, you should have a look and see at what Dignitas's social media team has done, because, well, they put, I as if those who follow me on Twitter saw that I replied to a thing about their stats. They show these stats that are like Fake God summer split stats. He's number 1 in vision score per minute and tied for number 2 in top, I think it was top lane first blood rate or something, like
Yeah.
whack stats. And like, that doesn't do your player any good either. Like, that is also really, really bad for your player. And I mentioned this in my reply in the tweet, like, okay, your intentions were good here, but that makes your player look so bad. And so it's not just the LCS broadcast that's making him look bad. The social media manager of his own team is making him look bad. Whether they're trying to or not is a different discussion. It's just 2 for 2 on just really misrepresenting Fake God and just really not making him look good.
Yeah. It just felt like it was a losing battle for Fake God in this one. The stats
Yes.
didn't help him, graphic didn't help him, and his gameplay didn't help either.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk more about EG though, because we've gotten through Dignitas. They looked awful, sure. I thought
Except
Ignar looked
KDM.
amazing. Yeah, sure. I thought Ignar looked really, really good. And people were questioning the set. Zanya's, that's just something he does all the time. Ignar goes Zanya's on any support,
Dude, I
it
think
seems like.
Zanya's is like so broken on engagers. I think more
Yeah.
engaged champions should be building Zanya's. The item is
he
just broken.
realizes he realizes that his role is to get an engage and then stall with the Zanya so that he's not just running it down. It's smart, it's good. And oh my god, was he able to peel so well in that game against he was peeling the Tristana, Danny's Tristana, really, really well. There was one play where Yasuo ulted the Tristana, set R to take him away, and then he uses his whatever the clap is called a couple times in that
Base
fight.
breaker.
Unbelievable how good he was in that game. And I thought this was just a perfect fu to the all pro voting that left Ignar in the dust, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that a little bit later, but like Ignar, I think played really well this series. I think it was definitely part of the reason why some of my reasonings last week about all pro voting is like how crucial supports have been this year in terms of like overall performance and how they affect the game and how they can basically just continually save the life of your ADC. And I think Ignar did exactly that. There were so many situations where like Danny was living on like 10% HP because Ignar was doing such a great job of peeling. Running the exhaust summoner spell, I think that summoner spell is absolutely broken into engagers like Diana, like Yasuo, any of these champions that basically just like get on your nutsack. Irelia, I don't know. And then also I think credit to Danny for like kind of like on the fly building a shield bow and Trist because I think there was like 3 different occasions in that game where Dig would just blow all their engage onto Danny and he'd get out with 10% HP and should they not have that shield bow, they would die and who knows, Draven gets like a couple kills and maybe they start snowballing that game.
I thought Danny had really, really good, we'll call it 80 carry instincts in this series. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean the killer instinct that we've talked about many times, and that lots of people like to talk about, quite frankly. That's not what I mean. I mean, maybe that as well. But what I mean is, like, he had so much patience in team fights, whereas, like, There's a lot of ADCs that will jump out if they see any threat. He did not jump out until he absolutely had to, and so many fights he would get as much DPS out as possible before having to jump out. It was unbelievable how calm he was for a rookie in his first playoff series. He did not stand out in any bad way whatsoever. He only stood out in good ways. I was really, really impressed with him, and yeah, I'm really excited with him as a player now after seeing him perform in a playoff series, despite it being against what I would say is a significantly weaker team. He still looked really, really good.
Yeah, I think the other main thing to talk about with EG is contracts starting at jungle. I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people weren't really expecting that, considering EG normally has put this announcement out like during the week that, oh hey, we're gonna be starting contracts for this game. And
Yeah.
then basically I started watching the game and was like, oh shit, contracts is playing. This isn't Svenskeren. And thought that was pretty interesting because I kind of assumed that they were going to go with that sort of six-man jungle style of roster where if you lose the first game or maybe you lose the first two games, you then swap up jungle, try to get some sort of morale change, momentum shift type thing going on. But Contracts was playing, looked really, really good. I think Contracts has been nothing but good in the times that he's been playing in the LCS.
Mm-hmm.
Has he played any other regular season games other than those two TSM games where he just like shit stomped them?
I don't know. I know he didn't play a lot, but I don't remember specifically how many games he
Well,
played. I just
this
remember he went in every once in a while.
I just remember those two standout games against TSM where he was basically 1v9ing, and I think he did a really great job in this series. I think this series was like mainly the Contracts and Ignar show for the most part. Their engaging and peeling was like absolutely disgusting, and you could kind of
Even
tell.
Jizuke was great too, though.
Yeah,
It's like,
but I mean he
yeah,
was playing against Isui, so whatever.
true.
You could kind of
Anyway,
tell like in a lot of these fights, especially the later the series went, how like uncoordinated Dignitas was, and them two just like really picking apart their engages and then re-engaging when they saw like good openings. Like it was just really, really clean. I think, despite them playing Dignitas in this series, I don't think anyone's opinion of EG have changed. I think people view this team as a top two team in the league. Maybe you could say top three based off of the TL game. Like people seem to be really high on TL after that series. But for me, I would still put EG in the top two. I think it's gonna be a really great series against 100T. Because we kind of got a little spoiled because of that Academy ting last week.
yeah. So with the contracts thing, first of all, I want to say that I called it because I did. But what I don't know if I might be taking too much credit because I don't remember if I said he's going to be playing by the end of the split or the end of the year or whatever it was. But honestly, this is still the summer split, so I'm going to take credit for that. But the other
Good
thing though
job,
is
Blue
that
Jay.
we don't know if contracts is actually starting yet. So hear me out here. So obviously he was starting in that series, but maybe and this could just be a
Yeah.
huge bait, right? Hear me. This is my my conspiracy theory here. Maybe it's just a big bait to put in contracts against a team that you know you're going to beat in playoffs. Like Dignitas looked really, really bad. Now you have contracts, and then in the post game interview, contract starts talking about how he needs to look better for next week. 100 Thieves could have it in their head should be prepping this week to go up against contracts. What if you throw Svenskeren back in and completely mentally fuck them? Huh?
I
What
mean,
do you think?
I don't know. I think that's like a fine strategy. Like, I think going into the series, like, nobody was expecting Dig to win this thing anyways. So, like, why not just play contracts and should things go badly, you can just go back to Svenskeren. But I honestly don't think
Yeah.
it's a bad idea. I don't think it, like, I would assume a team who's as good as 100 Thieves and will prep as good, will prep as well as 100 Thieves has, and considering Reaper used to coach contracts, I wouldn't think that they would kind of go into that series just kind of forgetting about contracts or not really thinking about that. Also, he coached Sven Skaren as well. Um, but I definitely think like it's a viable thing. Like you always see like in traditional sports and stuff, like whenever a player is like questionable to play that week or you're not really sure, like teams will always downplay it as much as possible and just always wait to the last minute to say like, oh, he's actually playing or oh, he's actually not playing,
Yeah.
just to get as like much of an edge as possible because it's playoffs and like this actually matters.
Yeah, because I don't remember what the day is that they have to submit the roster, but when they have to submit, that's when each team finds out the other guy's starter.
Yeah.
So they could try kind of hold their cards until they have to play them. Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe the thing is, the one thing I'll add to is that I actually think Contracts has just been better, and so maybe that's why they're going with Contracts. Let's put that out there. I think Contracts has looked better than Svenskeren, although not a lot of games. We haven't seen a bunch of contracts this year. We've just seen games every once in a while, and then this playoff series where he's playing against what is clearly a weaker team with his lanes winning just about everyone. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves here, and say Contracts is the next MVP. He's playing well. He's looking good. But I need to see more, and I need to see a better test. And 100 Thieves, I think, would be a better test. But who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe Svenskeren is still the starter, which if you go back and look at Travis Gafford interviews with Peter Dunn, this was like just a month or two ago. He was saying Svenskeren is our starter until, I don't know if he said till the end of the split or the end of the year. Again, I don't know, but he definitely says, he makes it clear that Svenskeren is their starter and they plan to use Contracts every once in a while. Well, we saw him play all 4 games this weekend, so who knows what's going on with that. But really interesting though. Really, really interesting.
We'll have to see.
Okay, do we want to do previews for next week's game?
Yeah. We'll just we got 4 days of matches next week, which
Let's
is
go. I
I
am
don't think
fired up.
I can't remember the last time there was actually 4 days because I'm pretty sure last time they did this format, I think they did 2 series each day. They didn't do like one on each day.
Oh, really? I don't
Hmm.
remember, honestly. I
I
thought they
bel
did Thursday.
mean, maybe they
I don't
did. I
know. My
just don't
memory
really
sucks.
remember.
Yeah, don't rely on me. My memory's garbage. But anyways, the first series, are we going, where are we starting? IMT Dig?
Yeah. We'll go in order of this is the
And that one's
IMT
on
Dig.
Thursday?
Yep, that's the first series.
Okay. Uh, I don't know what to think about Immortals because week after week they just change how they look completely. But I will say that Dignitas looks pretty weak, fairly consistently. Wow, that was more difficult than it should be. But I actually favor IMT in this one for those reasons because we do see every once in a while they have some pop-off performances. Um, Here's the thing. I was very hyped for Dignitas's bot lane. Well, last year I thought Afro looked really, really good, and in spring I thought that their bot lane looked good. Neo and Afro, they looked great. Even I would say. I do not think that's been the case anymore this summer split. I think that Afro has significantly fallen off, and I would say the same thing for Neo. And so a bot lane matchup that I would have favored Dignitas for very heavily back in spring, I don't know which way to weigh it anymore.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I think Afro's not playing as well as he has been. I don't know about significant fall off. I just think it's hard to look good on support when your team is like that bad. So I
Well,
don't
and
I
when you're
it's hard
changing
to
players, right?
exactly. It's hard to
Yeah.
like know what the actual like weight of each player is worth in terms of them hurting the team in a negative way. Um, but the main way I see the series is jungle. I think Xerxes is the best player on Immortals, and all the signs right now point to Acadian being the best player for Dignitas. And I think the solo laners on both these teams are very, very volatile or have been very, very volatile. Revenge gets behind a lot, and if you camp him, you can get a big lead from him. Same goes with
But
Fake
so
God.
does Fake God.
Exactly. Same goes with, and I think the same goes for mid lane. I think I've been very high on Insanity, and I think he's had a pretty bad split by all means. I think he's been one of the worst mid laners in the league. We know how we both feel about Yasui, and I think this game is going to heavily hinge on jungle influencing the game to help win it for their team.
So I pretty much agree with everything you said there. The one thing that I want to ask you though is, do you give the advantage to Xerxes or Acadian?
I think if we see the Acadian we saw in the series against EG, it's probably about equal. So I think in
Wow.
the majority of scenarios, I would just bet on Xerxes like looking better day of. But should we see Acadian play like he just did in this series, I think this series is basically equal because I think jungle's equal.
Yeah, so I do think Acadian has been looking better. I still go with Xerxes. I've been pretty vocal that I think he's the best player for Immortals, but also one of the better junglers we have in the league, honestly. And so I think that there's still going to be a jungle gap there, quite honestly. And I do actually, with how much Fake God has been struggling, I actually do give the advantage to Revenge in the top lane. In before I regret that
I don't
next
trust
week.
I don't trust either of them.
Yeah, I give the edge to Immortals. So I actually am going to give Immortals this series. I think I'm going to give it 3-1 to them. Although I don't feel confident just because we've seen so much inconsistency with them. But like I said at the start of this little segment here, we've seen a lot of consistency out of Dig, but not the good kind of consistency. So I'm going to go Immortals 3-1.
Yep, honestly, I think the series could go any way possible, and I would not be surprised whatsoever. I think we could see anything from a 3-0 either side or a 3-2 either side. Be like, yep, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I honestly think it's like literally doesn't matter what the scoreline you pick is because I think there's an equal chance that it goes any of those options. I'm just gonna say 3-2 Immortals because I think it's gonna be a fucking banger. We're gonna see some 40-minute bangers for sure. At least two. I'm predicting at least two 40-minute bangers.
Insanity got the juice.
I hope.
I
It'll take
yeah,
like I hope.
yeah. I
I
kind of hope so too.
3-2 Immortals. I don't know. I don't think it
Okay.
matters.
So you get the 3-2, I get the 3-1. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I feel like a lot of people aren't going to tune into this series because it's not like two popular teams,
And
but
it's on a
like
Thursday.
and it's on a Thursday. I think we're going to see some record low viewerships for a playoff game in this series, honestly. But
I
the
agree
way
actually.
how
Yeah.
you just mentioned that it's like we don't know what's going to happen in this series. To me, that makes it exciting. Like I can't wait to watch this series. But then again, I guess I just like every series, so there's that.
I think that's the
Uh,
case.
let's go next. Golden Guardians versus Cloud9.
The
Didn't
Licorice
think this
Revenge Tour.
didn't think this was going to be a thing. um This okay, if Cloud9 loses this series, would this be the most disappointing team ever in LCS history?
No, because I think of like the expectations that have been around this split. I think like let's cut the bullshit with like the caliber of players Cloud9 have this split. They didn't have a great
Mhm.
split. They had an almost 500
Sure.
record.
Okay,
They had a
okay. So
substitute.
I need to reword then. I need to reword because I guess as of right now, not that disappointing because we don't think they're that good right now after we've seen them look pretty rough throughout the split and they just got clapped by TL. But let's go back to the start of the year where you're signing perks. You know what I'm saying? And you have your Sven. I almost said Sven Mithi. But I guess you
Actually,
have Mithi the coach, but Sven Vulcan, like Cloud9's supposed to be really good. You signed perks, man. You spent bank. And if you lose to
I'm
Golden Guardians and you don't go to Worlds, that is disaster.
I'm gonna say no actually, because I think the season 8 TSM one is actually worse. When
Really?
yeah, when they signed Sven Mithi from G2 and they got Mike Young, like that roster doing absolutely nothing was probably worse, in my opinion. I think obviously things are it's kind of relative because everyone's gonna look at the price tag of perks. By the way, I don't know what this $11 million like keeps happening. Like, what is this number? Is it because of the buyout plus the like rumored contract?
That is what I believe. Yes.
Because
I don't know because they're
from what
never
I
really
well
transparent with it, right?
from what I remember, the $11 million meme came from the both of Perks and Sword Art because Sword Art got the $6 million deal and Perks' buyout was $5 million. So I feel like people are just stupid and have just shipped this $11 million onto Perks because I have no clue where this number came out of.
I don't think that's what it
The
is.
only time this number has been talked about is when it was Perks' buyout plus his Sword Art's contract at the start of the
I
split when both of them were playing bad. Not the start of
So
the
I
split,
don't
start of the
know
season.
because they're not very transparent with the numbers. Like the contracts aren't made public, but the I believe the rumor was that his buyout on top of his contract came to the 11 million that I keep hearing about as well. So maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think it's the perks plus
Well, that's what it
sort
was
of
to
thing. But
begin
I could
with.
be wrong. I could be wrong. I don't know.
I feel like
But
people just ship that number onto specifically perks, but I don't remember. I don't know.
I don't think that's what's happening.
I
But
still think,
regardless,
relatively speaking, I think the TSM one was worse.
yeah, I guess I would just disagree because with the TSM one, wasn't it Mike Young that was shitting the bed versus like
Oh,
this one?
Sven and Mithy weren't good.
Were they that bad? I remember
Yeah,
Sven
they
through
dumped.
in the spring thing
No,
with Ezreal.
that was in 2019. They were bad. They dumped Mithy for Smoothie back then.
Hmm.
Like they were bad.
Inter-
Sven Mithy they lost the clutch in quarterfinals.
hmm.
Like
Interesting.
this would basically be like almost the same thing. Like this, not to say this is quarterfinals because the brackets obviously different, but this is like Cloud9 made it to the upper bracket, lost their first series, and then if they were to lose their first series in lower bracket, it's kind of like losing in the first round of playoffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Anyways, if
to a
they were to
bad
lose the
team.
Golden Guardians, that would be absolutely insane and incredibly disappointing to say the least. However, I think both of us are still going to favor C9 here. but I don't think it's as free as you would expect a C9 versus Golden Guardians series to be, because Golden Guardians has started to look better lately. Now, I can't ignore that I think they have the advantage in pretty much every lane. Maybe not mid, because, well, Blaze Olive has started to look good and Perks has just been kind of dookie. But everywhere else, you got to give Cloud9 the advantage. And so, I mean, I still have the advantage for Cloud9, and I think I'm going to go three. Do I want to do 3-0? I don't know. They look so dog shit. Maybe I'll just do 3-1 out of fear.
I don't think it's going to be close. I do not see a world where Golden Guardians gets like advantages in like 3 or more roles in a game. I just don't
I
see
mean,
that
they
happening.
have played very, very aggro and proactive. I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but they have played that way all summer long, which leads to a lot of variance when you're trying to make plays early. You can snowball games and you can get put teams on their heels and whatnot, by being the first one to make a play. And you even heard Cold say it. What did he say exactly in the interview? Something along the lines of, "If you pressure C9 early, they struggle." Something like that. I'm misquoting, I'm sure, but I do think that the playstyle Golden Guardians has is a way to get C9 behind, because, well, I mean, if you want to go back to when they're fighting for every crab, that can be their weakness, is that they like to take fights even if they're bad fights. And so I think I'm going to give Golden Guardians a game.
I think that playstyle can work against any team, but what makes that playstyle so good and so impactful is when it's those teams who are so coordinated who don't make that mistake. Like what Team Liquid did against Cloud9. Like they made those plays with full pressure all around the map, and they had like those core JJ random level 3 roams to top lane to back them up. And like the one example that we saw out of Golden Guardians do that against Cloud9, it just completely backfired, and the game was just over off of that. And that doesn't like that doesn't mean that like Golden Guardians has no chance, and that's not a style that they can win through. But I just think Cloud9 does have that same ability to counter those types of plays because they've done it a bunch in the past, and we've even seen it specifically against Golden Guardians. I think the game plan from the only game plan from Golden Guardians to win the series is to make those kinds of plays. And I think if you're Cloud9, like, you just have to know that and play around that and just not ape out. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're not going to ape out once they're like in lower bracket and the pressure is really on.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. The other thing I'll say about it is, Fudge did struggle, might not be a fair word, but he did lose to Alfari in the top lane. I think he'll have a much easier matchup into Licorice. I think Licorice has definitely fallen off from what we saw him last year or the year before. We definitely aren't seeing Licorice at his peak anymore, and so I think Fudge will have a better chance of getting leads, and they will be able to play through top lane a lot easier than they can against Golden Guardians than they could against TL.
Yeah, I don't know. The way, just to quickly touch on Fudge from how I see it, I think everybody knew that Alfari was a better laner than Fudge. So
Hmm.
it didn't, well, at least to me, it didn't really surprise me that Alfari was getting the better of him in the 1v1 because the winning recipe for Cloud9 against Team Liquid was using Blabber to go up and pressure Alfari. And in that one game where we did see Cloud9 be super successful in the game 3, was doing that, which was going top lane a lot against Alfari. I mean, we even saw Fudge get a solo kill on him, or I mean, kind of like a solo kill where he traded 1 for 1 under tower. I thought
Hmm.
top lane was like went as expected.
That's
It
generous to call that a solo kill.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a solo bolo. Like he killed him solo.
They killed each other. They traded kills. Like, I wouldn't call that a solo kill. I would call that a trade kill.
Okay, well, basically, I feel like the matchup kind of went as expected there. So I wouldn't say Fudge got like out. I mean, yeah, he got outplayed, but like I guess I was
Yeah,
expecting that.
I know what you're trying to say. You're not yeah, it wasn't anything surprising, and it's not like TL solely won the lane through top. I get what
Yeah,
you or the series through
but
top. I get what you're saying.
I think both of them played pretty well for the most part.
Okay. And so you got C9 going 3-0 against GG?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, or let's go EG 100?
No, we got one of the more hype series. I think people are not going to be very interested in the 2 lower bracket ones, but the 2 upper bracket ones are pretty hype. First one on Saturday, 100T versus EG. I think the majority of people would actually favor EG over 100 Thieves, despite 100 Thieves finishing second, EG finishing third. But I think 100 Thieves, they've been on a bit of a decline, and EG's been on the upswing for like the last 6 weeks, it feels like.
Yeah, definitely, but I don't wanna write off 100 Thieves, like, this is still a good team, honestly. Yeah, like, they still have great players, and I think that even though, they had a slow end to the split, I still think their players were heavily underrated, specifically when it came to the All-Pro team voting. I think who he is still great, and I think people just completely missed that. I don't know. I thought he was hands down the best support, and so I think that you have the best support in the league right now. Maybe, I mean, Core JJ had just had a great series, but for the summer split, you have the best support in the league right now in this game on 100 Thieves, and I don't think you can discount that. Although I will say Ignar has looked really, really good too. I'm looking a lot to the supports in this series to be what's the term? I don't know, just being the role that has a lot of influence on the game. I think both of these supports can do that and should do that if they want to be the ones to bring their team to the next round of the playoffs and ultimately to Worlds, right? Because winner of this series goes to Worlds.
Yeah, they basically guarantee a world spot. Win.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think the way that I see the series playing out, I feel like it's going to play out very differently depending on whatever jungle is starting. I feel like if Svenskeren is starting and playing, we're going to see like a more slow-paced control kind of style. Whereas if we see Contracts playing, I feel like we're going to see like a bunch of Olaf and Diana in the series because both
Yeah.
Contracts and Closer are like really big on Olaf and Diana.
Yeah.
And I think, should Contracts be playing, you're going to want to give him this like early aggressive pick that can carry. And I feel like Closer is really good at playing both styles. And it's going to be kind of dependent on whatever jungler EG puts in, basically choose what style they want to play, if they want to like fight fire with fire or play a more controlled game. Because I feel like earlier on in the split, I would say like, okay, EG's pretty much only good at the fight fire with fire kind of style, and they're gonna live and die by like Jizuke like not throwing his lead. But I think EG's also played really, really well in terms of like controlling a slow-paced game. I think we really saw that in that last week, the previous week against C9 in that first game of week 9. They just played a really slow, controlled game, used Jizuke as a strong split pusher, basically out macroed them to win the game. And I think I actually favor EG in this series, mainly because I think individually I would take right now. I would say bot lane's actually even though I do agree with that. I think overall 100 Thieves bot lane has been better. I just think EG are kind of like riding some more momentum. I think Impact is just like the neutralizer in top lane, and I still believe that someday isn't as good as he once was. Jungle, like I said, I think that's going to be like the X factor in this series, and I think the way mid lane's playing out, I would rather take Jizuke over Abadage right now.
It's really interesting. So I agree with the mid lane thing. What's really interesting about the top lane is that you and I said there's no problem. Like you can always rely on Impact to do his thing. And I would say that he didn't have the greatest series against Dig. Not to say that
Hey,
he
really?
absolutely ran it down, but he did get hard gapped in the one game.
I don't think he got
Um,
gapped. I think he just got ganked 2 times.
well, I mean,
That
that's
shit
part of getting
happens.
gapped, right? It's not just the lane that happens. Like you need to be able to adapt and play around a jungler because there's a jungler in the game. Like that's how it works. You need to be able to play weak side, and so that's to me just saying that a guy got ganked is so it's not his fault. That's like anybody could get ganked. Anyone is playing the game as if they could get ganked, and so to me, he actually did get gapped in. I was it just it might have just been the one game, but the point is that he was so good towards the end of the split, and we didn't see that in this last series.
I
With that
I I,
said,
I think if you want to say he looked bad in that one game, I think he looked great in all of the other games. He was absolutely gapping Fake God in all three of
what
those
I
other games.
what I is that he looked a lot better towards the end of the regular split season than he did in the series against Dignitas.
I don't think so.
But
I think he played as well
okay,
as he
so then we
was.
disagree.
Yeah,
We
I
disagree.
he was
So what
shit
I'm still
stomping.
trying to finish still trying to finish my point here. What I am saying is that despite that, because we saw so much consistency out of him towards the end of the split, like I mentioned, I still have confidence that he's going to come into this series and be better than someday. And so that's why I lean Evil Geniuses, because I just think that he's better. And I think that that's the biggest area where there is a gap. Although I will say that, like you mentioned, it does matter who's playing in the jungle. And I think EG will win if Contracts is playing, but I think that 100 Thieves will win if Svenskeren is playing because I don't think Svenskeren's been very good this split. I think Closer will run over him and just make a lot more happen than Svenskeren. And so to me, it actually matters who's playing in the jungle more than anything else.
I think EG takes the win either way. I think I think yes, Svenskeren didn't start off the split too well, but I think he was ending it on a good note. I think I'll still take EG regardless. I think if I were to give my prediction right now, I would say 3-1 EG. I don't think it matters which jungle gets put in, unless Svenskeren is like inting his face off. I don't think it matters really. And I'll take EG 3.
So I am going to go EG 3-2. Can I go 100 Thieves 3-1 if Svenskeren plays all the games?
If he plays all the games, sure.
All the games, yeah.
Okay.
So just to, because you can't like do like a, well, if this guy played 2 games and this guy
No,
played
no,
three,
I
it gets
think
too
that's fine. I
complicated.
think that's
It
fine.
gets too complicated, right? So if Svenskeren plays all the games, I got 100 Thieves 3-1. If there's
3-1.
anything else, I'll go 3-2 Evil Geniuses.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah. Okay. Next up is TL versus 100 Thieves, or excuse
oh,
me, TSM.
yep.
Not 100 Thieves. This is going to be hella hype. So I remember saying, like, I'm excited to see whoever plays TSM, because TSM versus Team Liquid or TSM versus Cloud9 is going to be hype. It is even more hype having seen how good TL just played this past weekend. I am really excited for this series, and we saw viewership do really, really well with Cloud9 versus TL this past weekend. I think that we're going to see even better viewership with TSM versus TL coming up this week. So this is going to be omega hype, and this is the Sunday series. Who do you got favored, and what lanes are you looking at, James?
I think regardless of how the series played out, in the C9 versus TSM series, I think no matter when Team Liquid or TSM was going to face each other in the playoffs, whether it was now or whether it was in like the lower bracket or something, I think I was going to take Team Liquid almost every time.
Hmm.
Because I think TL are just like the better version of TSM. While they didn't have that great of a split, they had a lot of roster issues, and it was like it was a pretty slow start for them to get to where they are now. I think they're just the better version of TSM. I think one of the reasons why TSM has been so successful is because their ability to slow down the game and their ability to kind of like stall the game out through strong laning. I just think that Team Liquid just have better laners across the entire board. I think Uni's been very good this season against the majority of LCS tops because he's just a better mechanical player than them and just a better laner. And I think Alphari is the best mechanical laner in the league by a mile. And I just don't think you're going to have that same like Huni effect against Alphari unless there's like a big counter pick and jungle camp type thing. And similar to that, I think mid lane is just like a tale of two stories in mid, where Power View wants to sit back, farm, not do much. Jensen wants to, even though he might play some sort of control mage farm style champion, Jensen still does a lot around the map. We saw constantly him look for dives top lane against C9 and look for like defensive responses against C9, both in the series and in the week before on that Azir game. And I just think like if TL is able to like play their game and I guess not interface off, I think they're just gonna beat them.
Yeah. It should be really interesting. I do want to give PoE his fair share in the mid lane, because I do think there's going to be a lot of priority on Syndra. And so that's something that could really sway. Like, whoever gets Syndra, I think, has a really big advantage. As I mentioned, I think that champion is now busted with the mana buffs that she just got. And that's somewhere where PoE can really, really strive, man. His control mages are good. I would have given the advantage to PoE before seeing this past weekend, but Jensen looked really, really good. I'm still going to give the advantage to Spica over Santorin, although I will say it is a lot closer than I thought it would be, because I was really afraid that it would take time for Santorin to start to look good again, and it should have, but it just didn't. Like, he did not look out of place whatsoever. And so I think that jungle matchup is very, very interesting. With that said, I do agree that everywhere else on the map, I give the advantage to TL in the bot lane. I give the advantage to Alphari in the top lane. But I think Huni has had a really good split as well, and I don't think that lane is free by any means. This is going to be a really, really close series, but I actually have TL coming out on top as well, which is so crazy, because I where I differ from you, JT, is that before I saw this past weekend, I would have said TSM for sure, because I don't think it's very reasonable to expect TL to look that good in such a short period of time of having your full roster play together. It was just a couple of weeks that Santorin's been back. That is so crazy to me that he could come back and make it seem like he hadn't been gone. Um, but yeah, I think this past weekend really swayed my opinion, and so I actually am going to go TL. Um, Number of games. How do I want to do this? You do yours first. Let me think about this.
I was gonna go 3-1 TL.
Hmm. I the thing is 3-1 is like the most common score, so it makes me want to go 3-1, but I'm not going to. I'm hoping for a really clean or not even clean, but close. I got a moth in my room. A close series. I'm going to go 3-2 actually for Team Liquid. I think that this is going to be a great series. I'm really excited for it, and I think it should be close just about everywhere. And the last thing is I will say is I want to remind people that Sword Art has started to look a lot better. So even though Core JJ looked really good this past weekend, Sword Art has had a lot of influence on the games towards the end of Summer Split, and so I don't think that that's a free bot lane by any means either.
Yeah, like that was gonna be my main thing that I think from the TSM side, which will be really important. I just think like whatever support is going to have more impact in the early game is really going to give a big advantage to that team. I think TSM has been looking their best when Sword Art has been making aggressive plays on the map. I think what we see a lot from Core JJ is making these sort of defensive roams early on into the game, like basing and running to a lane to protect from a tower dive, or to protect from a wave getting stacked up and pushed off and losing a tower play. But from Sword Art, we see a much more aggressive playstyle at him, where we'll see him base, get vision control, walk to lane, push it out, and then go make a play mid lane, or like base. Walk to enemy jungle, ward it up, push the lane, then walk into enemy jungle with Spica, Power of Evil, and Lost, and just do these kind of like four-man collapses. We saw that against 100 Thieves. Um, was it week 9? Yeah, it was week 9, where they basically just won the game right at the start with Sword Art getting early vision and then killing Closer like 2 times in his jungle and just basically starving him out of the game on Olaf. I think when Sword Art is making these like really aggressive plays and doing his best to just like prevent win cons from the enemy team, like TSM actually looks really good. But when Core JJ is like reading the map so well and just like preventing the enemy team from making any aggressive plays, that's when TL is at their best. And I think it's going to be
Yeah,
like that little mini battle.
I really hope we see something similar like what we saw in Game 4 with Core JJ and Vulcan roaming absolutely everywhere. And look, this isn't that new, guys. I just want to like roaming support. This has been the meta for quite some time now. We've been seeing a lot of it. That game brought it to a whole nother level. They didn't go bot almost at all in that game, and I hope that we see something similar with Core JJ and Sorda. I think that that would make the series really really exciting, but should be a close one. Anything else on this series, JNT, or do you want to move on?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah, really, really exciting series. That one's on Sunday. Should be a 4 o'clock game, I believe. I think
Something like
Sunday
that.
game, 4 o'clock EST to be clear. I'm gonna look up the times just to give people the times because well, when is there ever games on Thursdays, right? So that's
Yeah.
something. So 6 p.m. EST on Thursday, Friday, 5 p.m. Saturday, 4 p.m. Sunday. So regular times, guys. Regular times that we've had for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all split long. The only thing is Thursday is also the same time as Friday, if that
Mm.
helps you guys. So everything's normal. Thursday, 6 p.m. EST. That'll be 3 o'clock on the West Coast. So that should help you guys out. Okay, let's get into the awards because they did announce the awards. Any standout thoughts for the All Pro voting? We did our predictions last week, or not even predictions, but what we thought should have happened. Anything
Yeah,
stand out?
I thought most of it went the way I was expecting. I think I did have a few picks that I thought, or I basically like where I thought, that player deserved to be over that player, but I just
Mm-hmm,
assumed based off of like recency bias and the popularity of players and kind of the narratives, like how it was going to end up. Like I wasn't surprised at all when I saw Spica jungle number 1, um,
mm-hmm.
because I feel like he's kind of like that narrative of him being like MVP candidate has been getting pushed, and I really wasn't
Yep,
surprised at all to see that. The only big surprise that I really had was Core JJ being number 1 support.
yep. I
I
agree.
think if I was like, if I had, I didn't even have Core JJ on my list, and if I did have him on my list, I would have had him as third over Sword Art because I
Yeah.
thought Huhi and Ignar were playing really insane this split. But I do think a little bit of like recency bias kind of played into it, where
Mm-hmm.
Huhi wasn't really doing a whole lot, and like I don't know how the hell he got like he passed Ignar. Like I don't even know how that happened. I think it could be understandable. Like I can understand why he passed Huhi because he was kind of fading into the distance a little bit. Like Ignar had a really insane split. Like I don't know how that happened. And then I
Yep.
was also surprised to see Ignar wasn't even on the list, and Vulcan was
Yep.
third team support. I think by my count, Vulcan would have been like fifth team support behind, you know, Huhi, Ignar, CoreJJ, and Sword Art. So that was surprising, but the rest I thought was pretty understandable.
So for me, I'm kind of like, I think I might have said this last week. If I didn't, I'll say it now. I'm kind of done with the all pro voting, not because like, oh, how could you get this so wrong? It's just like I've just accepted that like I think there's a lot of people voting on it that don't know what the hell they're talking
You're on the
about.
fudge.
Like
You're on the
Fudge said,
fudge. Yeah.
I am. I am on like I think he's right. Like I just don't care. So I'm kind of over it. My opinions are very much the same as you. If we're talking about who got robbed, Ignar. Ignar got
Yeah.
robbed. But every split there's someone that's left off of it that should obviously be on it. This isn't any so I'm not like, "Oh my god, it's like what else is new? They fucked up again." Ignar should be on this list. No doubt in my mind, Core JJ shouldn't be number one. And the thing is, if you said to me who's the best support in the league, and then you said Core JJ, sure. But who was the best support in the league this summer split? Not Core JJ. I'm sorry. He had a lackluster summer split despite how good he looked this past weekend. I think he looked really good, but it's not about this past weekend. This is a summer split award. And no, I don't. Core JJ is not number one. Ignar should not be left off this list, and no way should Vulcan be on this list. Sorry. It's yeah. That's my thoughts on it. Everything else is okay. I think you and I both said that we would have closer number one over Spica, but Spica had a good split, so that doesn't like.
Yeah.
I'm not like, oh my god, whatever. Like, sure, I can get behind that. And yeah, that's the only thing that really stood out to me. I think.
Yeah. The only other one that I just thought of now was how people had Impact as 2 and Huni 3. That
Oh yeah,
again was something that I thought was like a little bit
true.
recency bias.
Yep, for
Because I
sure,
think
absolutely.
I was even like fully expecting Huni to be like he was a potential number one, and I thought that was perfectly
Yep.
fine. Even though I thought Fudge should have been one, and I think him getting number one was deserved.
Yeah.
But I just feel like Impact being number two over Huni just doesn't like take into consideration how well Huni played. I think Huni was just like consistently one of the best top laners the entire split, whereas Impact had a really bad start, and yeah, he did really turn it on in the last 6 weeks. I just think that Huni has been great from the beginning. And like that's the specialty thing with this all pro voting is I feel like all pro voting is actually like ignoring the first 3 weeks and then you look at everything else.
Yeah.
Because people really seem
True.
to forget how hard people are inting in the first 3 weeks when you have these players in these spots. Like not even just talking about this split, like talking about previous splits as well.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. I guess the last thing I'll say on it actually is Xerxes. I thought should have been on there, but whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't think Blabber had a good split. Blabber got third team. I wasn't.
I thought he had a decent split.
Yeah, I thought that he looked really weak towards the start. That should have left him off the list. For me, I don't think his second half was good enough to make up for the bad first half, and I thought Xerxes was pretty solid throughout. So, but again, it's a very subjective thing. So I'm okay with it. Next up, we had coaching staff of the split, and that went to EG. And honestly, we forgot to do our predictions for that
Well, I
one
didn't.
last week, but I mean, I would have gone EG, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, they'd never really like normally they do some sort of announcement saying like, "Hey, we're gonna reveal all the awards on these specific dates," and they never did that.
Well, they did
Um,
it now. Now that they've announced
yeah,
one, they've announced the
yeah,
others,
but
right?
but I was kind of expecting them to follow like 1 week, 1 week, 1 week. But I also forgot that they introduced most improved players, so therefore
Mhm.
one was gonna have to be pushed into 2 weeks. So yeah, and I think it didn't really come as a surprise. I don't think there was any competition really for this other than EG. The other ones that I think could have made sense were like Golden Guardians or 100 Thieves. But other than that, I just think EG was like ahead by a mile.
Yeah, I thought it was EG. But yeah, I think that those are fair. Yeah, I think I heard some people say TSM as well, which is like, sure. The thing is with this, and a lot of people say this, and I'll continue to say it every time: is we don't know what's going on. Like we're not there for scrims, so how the fuck are we supposed to know? You just kind of you got to go off of what kind of players you're dealt with as a coaching staff and what you do with it. And when I look at players like Danny, who's like he came out of like proving grounds or some shit, I don't even know, and now he's like one of the better 80 carries in the league. That's where you point to this team and go, holy shit. Or even the fact that like um you had not so great of a spring split and then you had a really good summer. That's again another place where you're going to look towards EG.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, whatever, right? Congrats to EG for coaching staff at the split. Hooray. Um Rookie of the Year is going to be announced on August 11th. So just in a couple of days since when we're recording this. So I think it's fitting for us to do our predictions for that. J&T, who is your Rookie of the
Well, I think most people are probably going to go unanimously Danny,
Year?
but the other name I'll throw into the hat because I kind of forgot about this person that they're rookie because it felt like they've been in North America for such a long time. But Blaze Olive had a pretty good summer split by like the
Yep.
standards of perceived bad mid laners and performance on a low standing team. Because I had a
Mhm.
Blaze Olive as my third team All Pro mid. I thought he had a really good split start to finish. He was like the biggest carry of Golden Guardians pretty much the whole year. But kind of taking into consideration the whole year because it's a yearly thing, his spring split does kind of hurt his value because it was pretty bad on Golden Guardians. Like, while I think there were much, more problems with Golden Guardians and a Blaze Olive and spring split, it's not like he was like playing as well as he did this split than he was then. Danny
Yep.
kind of has that luxury of like like basically the luxury that Tactical had last year, where he was the like just absolutely smurfing in only summer split, didn't have to play spring. And yeah, I'm going Danny, and I think everyone knows it's going to be Danny.
Yep, I'm going Danny as well. I think you make a good point about Olive, but for me, he'd be more in the most improved player, which is going to come out on the 17th of August. So maybe we'll talk about that next week. But as far as rookie of the split goes, Danny kind of gets lucky because he didn't have to play in spring, right? So he could have been bad in spring, and then maybe he doesn't get the award, but he didn't play in spring. He only played summer, and he played well. Whereas a Blaze Olive played really well in summer, but played not so great in spring. Sorry, I hit my microphone. Not so great in spring. So it's like he's being penalized for playing in spring. But I mean, honestly, overall, I think Danny's been better even though he's only played a shorter time.
Yeah, and like man, I just totally forgot about like a Blaze Olive that he was actually a rookie because he's been in an A for
Yeah,
so long. Like he's been playing in academy since season 8.
yeah,
That's a long time. I
yeah,
think you do have these like guys who are like quote unquote stuck in academy, but I think a Blaze Olive's like actually proven himself to be a decent mid
yeah.
laner this split. I hope that he's probably involved in the Golden Guardians long-term plans moving forward in terms of
I
building
hope
a
so
roster
too.
for next year. And I think pairing Licorice and maybe Stixay and who knows what we see out of Iconic and Chime in the rest of playoffs. But I hope that we'll see a Blazov more on Golden Guardians.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Okay, so we'll do our most improved player next week then, since that's coming out in like 9 days or something. So we'll do our predictions for that next week. Let's do our Popoff Beansoup awards, right?
hmm Okay, I'll go first then, I guess. Popoff, I had Santorin for his epic Sejuani performances.
Yeah,
I
he was
love me
great.
some Sejuani. I think the champion is actually really good when you play what Santorin did and you do this version and you don't do the Armeo/Grig version of it where you just farm and do nothing in the early game and don't use basically the point of where your champion is the strongest, which is like levels 1 to 7. But
I
yeah.
lost you for a bit.
Okay. Basically Santorin, Sejuani, good. Thumbs up.
Yeah, he had a great weekend. I went with Jensen because I did not expect him to gap mid lane that hard, and I thought he was the biggest difference for that series. So yeah, uh, Jensen absolutely popping off and big time mid gap, and I think the biggest reason they won the series. So yeah,
Yeah.
I went with
I want to give an honorable mention to Acadian because Acadian kind of fits into my bean soup because I'm giving my bean soup to all of Dignitas for playing so terribly when Acadian was trying to carry them to the finish line. I thought Acadian actually had a really, really good series. I thought his Gragas, like you mentioned, basically right at the beginning of the show, was super, super good. He got a ton of early game ganks off. His ults were like super impactful in team fights. I think he was doing the best he could with Yasuo's Yasuo because Yasuo's Yasuo wasn't doing too much. I think he had some really fat engages. Was doing his best. I think he's been making a lot of improvements because we both didn't think that he was playing very well when he first came in for Dardoch. And like I mentioned in the Dig versus Immortals preview, he's going to be the key to them beating Immortals.
yeah. For my bean soup, I had to go with the other side of the matchup. I went with Perks. I think that he okay. All split long, he was given the pass because he should perform in playoffs, and that's fine. Like playoff perks is a thing. We didn't see it. I didn't see playoff perks. His Rise game was okay, I suppose, but the series overall, he looked really, really bad. And so I had to give Bean Soup to perks. Honestly, I thought that was really, really disappointing. Not what you should expect out of what should be the best player in the league.
All right. Yeah, I thought yeah, Perks didn't have a great series. The Rise game was like the only game where he felt like he was actually playing the game
Hmm.
because he was just dying to a lot of random ganks early on. We did kind of talk about that like kind of Jizuke factor where like you just gank him and he'll probably die. Um, and I think, hopefully this is the whipping that he needs to turn it on. We got quick news up next. Just a couple quick little things to get through. One thing that was kind of controversial that people were talking about was the LCS announced that they are partnering with FTX, which most of you should probably know what FTX is because that was the big sponsor that TSM signed at the start of Summer Split with that huge contract. It was like 10 years for $210 million. I don't think any numbers got released for the LCS partnership. All that I remember, it was a 7-year deal. I don't remember hearing anything about the money. And that they're also doing the little sponsored segment I assume most of you saw, which was the FTX Gold Advantage. Thought it was
Hmm.
a little bit weird. Like it was when I first saw it, I was like, wow, this looks really out of place, and like get this the hell off my screen. But as I was watching all the games from the weekend, I was like, oh, it's actually good to like not have to do the mental math like at points during the game and just see what the gold advantage is. Although I do think personally, one stat that I really wish that the LCS or any broadcast would kind of introduce is one that would actually show like a live gold advantage. And what I mean by that is like your gold advantage that you have on the map right now in terms of like the items you bought, the control wards you purchased and placed, as opposed to like just gold advantage, because I think sometimes like gold advantage can be a little bit of a like a false statistic because you do see these games sometimes where like a team might be up like 6,000 gold, but they're still holding like 4K in the bank. So like it kind of gives the viewer the wrong idea like what team's actually strong and kind of whatever. So, but I think that it's actually like a pretty good change.
Yeah, I think it was a great change too. And it's funny because now with the gold differential, it's like there's no sense in looking up at the gold itself anymore. And it made me wonder, like, why did it take so long for this to be introduced? When you look at gold, like it doesn't say much to someone to be like, oh, this team has 36K gold. It only matters if they have 36K gold, but the other team has 34K gold or something like that. Like you need to see both. And so now that there's actually the difference in gold up there on the screen, there's not really a big reason for me to look up at the gold anymore, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah, after like watching so much League, you kind of know like what the gold looks like during the game, and it's like more about what team
The
has more than
difference
the other.
matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, the difference is what matters, not the actual totals. And so with the goal differential being there, you don't really need the totals anymore. But anyways, that's just another thing. A lot of people were really upset at the LCS because how could you deny TSM having this in their name, but you can't, but you're allowed to take the sponsor as a league? I wondered the same thing, quite honestly. And it seems like Chris Greeley, the commissioner, came out and explained why. He basically said that when it comes to crypto, you're not necessarily allowed that on the international stage. And so you can't take off the FTX from a TSM jersey, for example, that you would go international. Whereas like the LCS is only in North America, obviously. So if you have to take off any of the FTX stuff from any sponsorship or anything like that, you can do that within the LCS. But if it's on a TSM jersey and you go international, you're not allowed to have that. So that's
But
why they're not allowed to have that in their name or whatever it is for the LCS specifically.
what I
And
don't
that's why
understand about that though is like why could that not have just been made like a stipulation in that
I
thing in the
wondered that
first
as
place?
well.
It would still be beneficial for FTX to have them as TSM FTX during the LCS, but not Worlds. Like you're not gonna beat like if it wasn't gonna be allowed, it wasn't gonna be allowed on Worlds anyways. Like at least have it in LCS if it's technically allowed because of like the whole regional like the regional description of why like Chris Greeley said
Mhm.
like I don't
So I wondered
understand
that
that.
as well, though. I'm sure there's a reason though, because
There probably is.
if there wasn't a good reason, I feel like TSM would take to social media and be like, "What the hell?" Right? Because they have a lot of sway in what the community thinks. And so I believe that if there wasn't a good reason, it would probably be allowed for TSM. So I'm sure TSM is probably okay with it. and that's just the way it is, right?
They also probably
What's
don't care that much because they got paid
they made
$210
bank.
million. dollars.
Yeah, they made absolute bank. All right, what's next?
Next up, Evil Geniuses is partnering with a Premier League football club, the Wolverhampton Wanderers. Who the fuck are they? I've never heard of them.
Soccer team,
I
football
mean,
team.
it's a Premier League team. I don't know if it's like in the actual like Premier League or like the Challenger, whatever you call it, like the Challenger League, like below it, because the way that it works is like they do promotion relegation, and I don't know if it's like a Challengers team. I'm using the league terminology here, like a Challenger team or like an actual Premier League team. I'm pretty sure it's not a Premier League team because I would have known who they were.
I'm so far out of my depth here. It's like, oh, okay, football club, sure.
I think they're just a challenger team, if to use the league terminology. I'm not sure. They're probably getting paid, so EG's getting some more money. Good for them. Next
Yeah.
up, Double Lift put a little update video out on his YouTube channel, kind of giving like a bit of a life update, basically talking about
Hmm.
how him and Lena have COVID, how
Yep.
Double Lift, it's not really too bad. He just has like the classic symptoms of cough, losing taste buds, and whatnot. But he says
Yeah.
he thinks he'll be fine and whatnot. But the main thing to take away from the video was that he did say he was going to take a bit of a break from actually playing League.
Yeah.
He said that he's had a lot of fun and enjoyment from doing the co-streams with Videos and Sneaky, and basically running the stream 3 days a week. But what he hasn't found so enjoyable was actually playing League, and he kind of said that he feels like taking a bit of a prolonged break from the game kind of help him get back into it and get him more motivated to play it.
Yeah, the good thing is that he's still enjoying the co-stream or the watch part, whatever the hell it's called,
Oh
because
yeah,
it is actually so good, and he is raking in viewers. By the way, he got up to like 37 or 38K, maybe even 40K. I don't know.
38K.
The highest I saw was 37 or 38K. Omega lol. And that was that's a lot of viewers, guys. That is a lot of viewers without it
Yeah.
even being TSM playing. That was during the C9 TL series. So yeah, I'm glad that he at least he's enjoying that for sure. So that's good.
Yeah, what I will say is for me, I kind of am like I'm like that, where I like need to take a break from a game if I'm not having fun. I always
Yeah.
find that whenever I take like a prolonged break, not as long as what Doubles was saying, like 2 or 3 months, but like if you just take off like a week to 2 weeks from playing the game, I always find like you jump back into it with like a better mindset, feel more motivated to play, and then it's usually like a better time than just doing like the mind-numbing queuing up, especially in League when you can get really tilted.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I think he might have even said it in his video like solo queue doesn't like there's not what does hitting rank 1 in solo queue even do for him? Like even if he were
Yeah,
to hit rank 1, like he doesn't care. So what's
yeah.
there there's no drive there, and like I'm sure he'll get back to playing it eventually, and I think he says that as well. But yeah, for now he needs a break. Totally understand. And yeah, at least he's doing the co-streams cuz they're pog.
Yeah, when he started saying that, I was like, damn, is he gonna like stop the co-streams? But like, it was all right. Like, it was okay.
Dude, I think I okay, so I do love the three of them. Like the three of them together are great. I think Meteos is hands down the MVP of that co-stream. That guy is freaking hilarious, man.
He's he he
Actually,
he fills the void of like the gameplay talk and like hilarious banter.
dude, you okay, he is like the memer, and then you have Sneaky who's like the uh well, Double Lift is like the flame guy, and then Sneaky is like the it's not so I
The
understand what they
mediator.
were going for kind of guy. Like they literally have those three pieces. The
No, it's
one
it's
thing
a good combo.
Dude, the one thing Sneaky said was so funny this weekend. I think it was during the Dig series. I don't remember what they were talking about, but I think Double Lift asked him like, "What would you do if you were in Dignitas's shoes in this scenario?" And he's like, "I would just take off the shoes."
Yeah.
I thought that was so funny, man.
Okay, when I do remember that, but when he first said that, I thought he was meaning like when you get serious when you're playing games, and like sometimes you
Me
take off your
too.
shoes. So when he first said, it, I was like, oh shit! It's like if you're playing like Smash and you do the lean up in the chair, like that meme.
Yeah.
I thought he meant that, but it was like, oh shit, he's just like flaming dig.
That was so funny. Oh my god. Okay, anyways, what's next?
Next up, the LCS Players Association announced that they were doing this little meeting slash I don't know what the word is.
Hmm?
They were basically having like a conversation with a lot of the scouting grounds players and providing a lot of information for these new young players about like maybe joining a team, contract stuff, like da da da.
Yeah.
Like I'm missing the word.
It was like a educational session to teach
That yeah,
players some
that's
advantages for themselves, how they can
yeah.
grow their brand going into the league, like just some really important things that most players wouldn't know how the hell to do when you're new to a league, right? How do you do any contract negotiations if you don't know what you're doing? You don't even know that you can get a lawyer or agent. Like these are all things that like some of these players really need to hear so that when it comes time, or if it comes time for them to play in the LCS, they have a lot of things taught to them by people that have been through it themselves. And I think it's a really good thing for the LCSPA to be doing, or I guess it's the NALCSPA, which is like the longest abbreviation
Well,
ever.
I'm pretty sure it's
But
the LCSP.
well, that's what I thought too. But I'm seeing their at for Twitter is at NALCSPA.
I guarantee you they didn't change it from when before they dropped the
Yeah,
NALCS and just became
yeah.
LCS. I
The
guarantee you
the
it's that.
Yeah, because the title says LCS Players Association. Anyways, doesn't matter. It's the Players Association for the LCS, and yeah, it's just a cool little thing that I think it's good they do that because I think it's needed. And I think one of the really big things for me, which is just good for everyone, is that they grow their brand while they're in the league because their brand is what gets people to come back. Like people cared about Double Lift winning or losing because he would shit talk people. Same thing with Jensen. Like that's things that matter, and growing your brand is a big part of that. So,
Gonna clap
anyways,
Faker.
yeah, really important stuff right there. So that's pretty cool. What's next?
Next up, we got some more EG stuff. This is actually kind of a funny one. This just popped up on Reddit earlier today. Jizuke was making a post for his Italian fans on Facebook because
Yeah.
yes, apparently in Italy they still use Facebook all the time. I don't think I ever use that app whatsoever or go on that website. But
I
basically,
hate it. Oh, I hate Facebook. But that's besides the point.
yeah. Well, the short story is he was basically flaming Deathly on his Facebook because he had just posted this after they had beat Dignitas, and he was kind of praising Danny and praising like all the changes that they've made on EG and how good they're feeling now that they don't have Deathly, and basically that like Deathly was the weak link of that team. Feels bad, man, for Deathly. Because while I do think he was one of the problems on EG, it just feels a lot worse when like one of your teammates just like goes out of his way to say that publicly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does feel bad. It's funny, but it's also like it feels bad, man. What I wondered when I heard that was I wonder if he ever told that to Deathly, like to
Yeah,
like
it'd be yeah.
for
That
good and bad reasons because like one that's like Omega Flame, but two it's like if there's a problem with your team, like the player needs to know, they deserve to know that they're holding their team back so that they can at least start grinding more, I guess, and get to it. It's like you don't want to say you're the problem, but if there is a problem with a player, he deserves to know from his teammates. It's like he deserves the transparency, but he doesn't deserve the flame. So it's like, eh, it's like a touchy subject there. This isn't the way you want to find out about it. Let's put it that way.
is definitely even on a team right now.
I don't I don't think so,
Like
but I have no
I
idea.
don't think he's on an academy team. And I honestly don't even think I remember hearing about him being on like a proving grounds team or like a amateur type team.
Yeah, I have no idea. But imagine
Dang,
like you're finding out about this now on Reddit. You're like, oh god damn.
feels
Like
bad, man, for
that's
Degon.
really embarrassing. Yeah, like that could be career ending, honestly. If everyone sees this and like now you just have this like don't get me wrong, his gameplay was kind of career ending, but this doesn't help. It certainly doesn't
Maybe
help.
maybe he can pull a little role swap thing. Maybe he can pull a Keith McBride.
Maybe he can pull a contracts and just get back in there again and get better and get make
Maybe.
his way back. Possible. What's
Okay.
next?
Last up, another thing that got announced earlier today. Vizicachi, what I would say EU LCS legend. Vizicachi, Unicorns of Love, Beastium.
Not the LEC, the EU
Yeah,
LCS.
that I specifically said
Yep.
the EU LCS.
Yep.
He's joining Mad Lions as a coach for Mr. Armut in the top lane.
Armut.
Yeah,
I don't have anything else to add. I just like saying Armut.
I like Mad Lions. I like a lot of their players on their team.
Yeah.
I think they're
Yeah.
cool guys. I hope
Yeah, LEC
they
playoffs should
make
be starting,
Worlds.
so that's going to be exciting too. LEC
Yeah.
playoffs.
If I had to
Dude,
pick,
did you
just a
see
you hey, just quick little thing we'll throw in at the end. Who are your three LEC Worlds team?
Rogue, uh not Fnatic. Ooh, how about that, huh? Rogue, G2 and Mad Lions.
Yeah, those are my three as well. I think most
Yeah.
likely it'll probably be Mad Lions versus Fnatic for the last one if I had to pick, because like Fnatic fell off pretty hard, and I think G2
Yeah.
is actually looking really good. Their last half of the split they went 9-1 basically, and
Yeah,
they looked really good.
it's interesting, the LEC, and all the leagues are interesting right now. If you guys haven't seen the bracket for the LPL, go have a look at that.
That thing's
They got like
fucked.
double buys. FPX is like 2 rounds ahead, or
Oh
maybe
yeah, yeah.
3.
No.
I
If
think
you're first
FPX
and
plays
second
their
seed,
first game in like the 4th round of playoffs or
yeah,
something. It's crazy, and there's another team out there as well. And then I don't know, it's like a whole like
EDG.
gauntlet system or something. It looks really cool, but anyways, that should be exciting. I think Suning is playing soon, and they're my team after last year, so
Yeah,
I'll have to watch Suning, even though they've only finished like 9-7, but they could get hot. I wouldn't mind that. And the LCK is almost done, the regular season. I think they have a couple of games left, maybe a
yeah.
couple days of games, and then playoffs start. But the playoff race is really close. 1 through 6 is decided, so the playoff teams in the LCK are decided. But 1 through 6 is like only 2 games different. I think Afrika Freaks are 9-7, and then Nongshim and somebody else, Live Sandbox, are both 11-6 with a game left to play, something like that.
Hanwha
Um,
Life sad.
Hanwha Life Bean Soup.
Dude, I wish I want Chovy to stay on Hanwha Life, but like honestly, just get Chovy on a good team. That guy's so fucking good.
Dude, I'm afraid for Gen G. My team's Gen G, and they're starting to slip a little bit.
Yeah, dude, I don't like dude, also T1's looking good, and League is always better when Faker's good.
LCK is really exciting right now.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's really really
And
close.
Damwon's
I
looking
like
better.
Afrika Freaks too. Yeah, I like a. There's a lot of teams I like on the LCK, to be quite honest.
Also,
So,
well,
anyways,
you were a
LCK is looking pretty cool right now.
pretty big Nongshim I wouldn't say
Yeah,
hater, but non-believer. Are you a
hater.
believer now? No, no, sorry, not hater, non-believer. Or do you
I was
believe
just
now?
really surprised to see that Peanut. I so it's even that I don't even think non-believers really like. I was just saying like I was really surprised to see Peanut having a resurgence, but like I remember saying like he was looking really really good. So I wouldn't say
No,
non-believer. I was just,
there were
when I was
times
watching,
at the start where you were like, when they were 4-1 or 5-1, you're like, they're not gonna finish like that.
I didn't think that they would finish first. So maybe a non-believer in that, but I did think that they were a good team.
It looks like they might finish first though. LCK
Duck
is pretty good.
Dom's a beast. I like
Yeah,
that guy.
you got
But
Rich, right? They have Rich,
they have Rich too. Yeah,
the
Peanut,
Hots beast, the Hots faker.
Gory in the mid lane. I
Yeah.
get all the names mixed up because I don't watch enough LCK. But
All
anyways,
I want is Faker to win, and then all will be right in the world.
hmm, anyway.
Dude, if you, man, this is like so out of left field, but if you were one of those people that was like hating on SKT and hating on Faker back in the day, like it's boring watching SKT win worlds. Fuck you. I don't like you.
Okay, man.
I don't like you. That shit's good.
Okay, I think that's it for this episode. We've gone on. We've dragged our feet long enough. Uh, just want to remind everyone, hit the subscribe button. It helps us a lot. And make sure to hit the like button. And if you somehow don't know still, maybe this is your first time watching, we are available on multiple platforms. You can find us on Spotify, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, and all the podcast platforms that are supported by Anchor. So anchor.fm, if you find Clown Fiesta podcast on there, they will give you a bunch of options. Anything else, JNT?
Yeah, if we want to, we can have a live stream next week because
Oh,
I'll be in Texas.
okay. JNT is a little bit less travel guy next week, so maybe we'll
Yeah.
have a live stream. If there is a live stream next week, I'll tweet it out. To remind people that we might, we might be live again, which we haven't done for a few weeks now. So that should be exciting. Okay,
Alrighty.
that is it. We will see you guys next week, one way or another. We will try to get an episode out to you guys. This has been episode 54 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. Goodbye.